Hello and welcome everyone to another Sales Hacker webinar. I hope you're staying safe and sane, or maybe a little bit insane so that you can stay happy. I don't know. Might have to have some insanity to be feeling happy right now. But I hope you're staying positive. Thanks for hanging out with us for the next 45 minutes to an hour or so. I'm really excited for this one. We've had close to 2,000 people register for this. So we had 1,600 plus register for this webinar. I'm going to go on a limb and say this is probably the second most popular webinar we've ever done on Sales Hacker. The number one is held by Manny Medina, CEO at Outreach, of how to follow up without being a stalker. Go check it out on YouTube. It's really good. But number two, this is crazy. And we only dropped this 24 hours ago. And a large reason for that is because of this guest that I have. I'm joined by Scott Ingram. Scott, what's up, man?
Hey, Scott. Good to see you. Scott squared today. Scott
squared. And then there's the ebook that we're going to be going back to. There's two other Scotts. So what is that, Scott?
Scott Leese and Scott Douglas Clary.
Yeah, love it. So what do we call that? Not Scott Cube. That would be Scott to the power of 4.
That's it.
Somebody help us out.
Yeah. It's a big exponent. That's what it is.
It is. It certainly is. All right. So what we're talking about today is finding sales success on LinkedIn. 108 tips from 36 LinkedIn sales stars. And, I'm going to get Scott, I'm going to get you to introduce yourself for those who don't know, and talk a little bit about where this is all coming from. But before we do that, two really quick things. So number one, this is recorded. So if the kids start screaming or you got to go make lunch or whatever it is, I know there's a lot going on in this new work at home life we all lead. So feel free to do so. We'll send this out within about 24 hours. Number two, myself and Scott are actually good friends. We can hang out and talk on the phone. We can have Zoom conversations all day long. But the reason we're doing this today is for the community, for the Sales Hacker community. So we're really hoping that you're in the driver's seat for most of the time. We have a ton of questions we want to get through. We can talk about this all day long, but we want to answer your questions. So it's so much more fun when we know we're hanging out with, and I know there's a lot of you because I can see all of you. There's like literally thousands. So if you want to jump on the chat, introduce yourself, your name, your company, that would be amazing. We'll do some shout outs. And then if you have questions, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom, and we'll try and bang out as many as we can. But let's dive in, man. Scott, for those people who joined us who maybe don't know the legendary Scott Ingram as well as I do, who are you? Where'd you come from? And how'd you learn all these sales secrets from LinkedIn?
Yeah, so we'll just talk about today. We won't go back into the ancient history, but I am a quota-carrying sales guy. I work for a professional services firm called Relationship One, and most of my clients are Fortune 500 companies who use the Oracle Marketing Cloud. I'm a former Eloqua guy, and they were my favorite partner when I was selling Eloqua, and now I've worked with them for about the last 4 years. So I'm responsible personally for a $3 million services number with them. And then in my spare time, I started all of this stuff that really began about 3.5 years ago with the Sales Success Stories podcast, where I only interview active quota-carrying individual contributors. And the rule is they have to be the number one top performer, or I joke, I'm willing to settle for the top 1%. So if somebody happens to be number 2 on a team of 500, that is good enough for me. So that's where this started. And all of this content, the Sales Success Stories podcast and this LinkedIn project in particular, I'm a big believer in learning from the people who are doing it the best right now. And so I really, after a coffee meeting with Scott Leese, another Scott, who is practically my neighbor, he lives within about a mile of me here in Austin, he really challenged the way that I had been approaching LinkedIn. And I really decided to sort of shift my strategy and my approach. And I've really been thinking about LinkedIn and this new approach that I've been taking. And as I was getting ready to do a webinar, I thought, hey, you know what? LinkedIn's a really hot topic. I'm learning a lot about this. How can I serve the community around this topic. And I just went back to what I'm all about, which is let's find the people who are doing it the very best and figure out what they're doing, because that's what's working, right? Let's not talk about this. Let's see what the real doers are doing.
Totally. Yeah. And that's what I love about a lot of the content you create. And if we can, Alex, if we can throw Scott's podcast in the chat here, definitely everyone go check it out. I was lucky enough to be on there. How long ago was that now? Probably a year and a half ago.
I should have looked this up. Actually, there's a hack. So what you could do, if you go to top1.fm/Scott-Barker, that'll take you right there.
There you go. That was
Yep.
how we initially got introduced. That was a lot of fun. And since then, I got to check out your Sales Success Summit down in Austin. That was a lot of fun. So, anyway, long story short, this guy's up to a lot of stuff. Go check out all of his things he has going on, because there is a lot. But let's go, and quickly, quick shout outs. I'm a man of my word. So we got Steve Cortez from Operatics. What's up, Steve? Ross Lee, Lou, and Crystal from the 20. Hello, hello. Jason Banks from Lloyd Staffing and Search. We have Yemek from Turkey. We got Turkey in the house. That's amazing. We've got Brazil, Atlanta, Georgia. Wesley, what's up? Fernando, Jay from San Francisco, Michelle Gilbert, Dustin. All right. I love it. Well, thanks for hanging out, guys. And again, if you have any questions as we're going, use the Q&A. You can use the chat just to chime in. All right. So let's start at the beginning, man. So tell me a little bit about this idea behind these interviews, behind this ebook. What is kind of the model you use to identify these quote unquote LinkedIn sales stars?
Yeah. So what I wanted to find was something that was publicly available, right? So you wouldn't need any sort of special tool to be able to do it, that you could pull together pretty quickly and evaluate anyone and easily evaluate yourself and kind of compare. And so the model that I looked at, to me, what matters the most on LinkedIn, I think the most visible outward sign of success is a high level of engagement, right? It's one thing. And as I was pulling this together, I found people who had tens, even hundreds of thousands of followers on LinkedIn, and then they would get a post and they couldn't even get a cricket to like their post. And so I really started to look at, okay, let's dive into this engagement model. And so what you can do, and you can do this on anybody, you can do it on yourself. If you go to the profile and in the activity section, click on see all activity. And on there, you can narrow it down to just the posts. So click that posts option. And what we did is I looked at their last 10 posts, because sometimes, people have a big post that goes viral and I wanted to kind of smooth things out. So we decided to look at the last 10. And if you just simply add up the number of likes and comments across those 10 posts, so 20 numbers that you're adding up, and then take that number and divide it by their total number of followers. And the reason we do that is now you get a percentage. Now you get an engagement rate. And in some ways, it favors folks who don't have massive followings, because if you've got a massive following, you got to really have a high level of engagement to sort of make the list. So I wanted it to be really accessible and shine a spotlight not just on the people that had 20, 30, 40, 50,000 followers, but people that had 3,000, 4,000 followers, but were still getting 100 comments on every one of their posts and things like that. So we drew the bar. We said, look, you got to have at least 2,500 followers. So you got to be in the game at some level, and then an engagement rate above 5%. And what I've done, and the place that we've assembled all of this the PDF is free. It's not even gated. You don't even have to put your contact info in there. If you go to top1.fm/LinkedIn sales stars, all one big messy thing, on that page, I've started to create that list. And through this process, I'm committed to keeping that list more or less up to date. I'll do probably monthly updates, and I'm gonna keep at least about the top 100. Right now, there's maybe 55 people on that list. So when we do the next update everybody's stats, add some new folks, call it the end of April, early May, we're gonna have 100 folks on there that again are driving those high levels of engagement. I think that's a good place to go and look and see, who do I look at to just follow and understand and learn from what they're doing? So the tips that I collected are amazing. And I reached out to these folks. Scott, you were one of them. Appreciate you participating in the project. I asked them for three things. I said, number one, what's the advice that you have for somebody that's just getting their start on LinkedIn? Maybe they've had an account for a while, because I think a lot of people have had an account for a while, but they're not really doing much with it. I'm like, what's the most important thing that they need to do? And then the second tip, I said, give me a more advanced tip. So if somebody's got all of the basics pretty well nailed, what's the next thing that they should do to really get a lot of value and benefit from the LinkedIn platform? And then for the third tip, I said, look, I want your secret sauce. Like, what's the one thing that you're doing that's moving the needle the most? And so that's basically the format for those tips. It's amazing how this type of project works. I knew maybe a third of the folks before going into it. Of these 36 contributors, nearly everybody said yes. And again, it's just testament to how much people are willing to contribute to be a part of this community and pay it forward and give back. And then the result is that PDF where we've got 108 tips. It's actually a lie. I think it's 112 tips. I'm the 37th person, so there's a lot in there. It's really just amazing stuff. And again, we tried to get into at least some glimpses of some of the secret sauce and what is really working the best at the highest levels of performance from this platform.
I love it. I love it. And a testament to you, of course, and the community that you've built. I think that's why a lot of people are willing to share their secret sauce with you, and you're always given to the community. So I loved how you did this, right? So you've got this 36, which is actually 55, and you whittled it down using this engagement metric. And everyone on there, I highly respect. I think you did a great job kind of whittling it down. So my one thing, which I talked about this before, and I want to just quickly bring this up for folks who are on this. So not all engagement is created equal. Is that a fair statement, Scott?
Totally fair statement. And why don't you talk about why that's true?
Yeah. Yeah. So because of the algorithm, which we'll go into the algorithm, and there's mixed feelings about the algorithm, but because of the algorithm, for whatever reason, written posts do much better than videos, much better than if you're sharing a graphic of any sort. Of course, if you share links, then you're not even in the game. So I know if I post written content every single day, that engagement metric would go up quite a bit, because that's what it favors. I get more likes, more comments. What I do find, I still will do a video or two a week, perhaps a graphic thrown in there as well. I find rich media is just more pleasant experience. When I follow someone and I get to see what they're like on video, I get to see maybe a photo of them. It's just more enjoyable of a following experience. And then two, I've actually seen, when I post a video, yes, I won't get as many likes or comments on it, but I actually might get more connection requests, which is interesting. And my hypothesis is that people feel more connected with me that way.
100%. Yeah. So I think video is probably the most extreme example. So to your point, the algorithm loves just straight text, use lots of words, get people, reading through and spending a little bit of time on that post and commenting. Videos never perform as well. But from an experiential standpoint, right, if an image is worth 1,000 words, what's a video worth? Right? People are seeing your body language and the way that you're acting and the way that you're talking, and they get your passion and all the other things that you can't possibly get in a text post. And I think it converts better. To your point, you're getting more followers. You're getting a deeper level of engagement. So LinkedIn, and by this kind of methodology of looking at engagement, yeah, you're getting shortchanged a little bit. So it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. And Jake Dunlap actually had a great tip about this, and he talked about, like, don't pander to the algorithm. Don't solely look at just the game and the way that LinkedIn's trying to get you to play it. You got to kind of find your own game, and you got to find what works. And Jake's a guy who does a ton of video, and he does it extraordinarily well. And he's got a super engaged following, and a following that, again, for him and their business does convert, right? There's a meaningful impact in the work that he's doing on LinkedIn, even though he's going beyond just plain text.
Yeah, totally. And you can almost see those people who get swallowed by the algorithm, who are chasing the algorithm, so to speak,
Yeah.
and they kind of have an initial big bang and then almost fade away over time because it's not authentic and people can kind of feel it and sense it. All right, so we're getting some great questions already, so thank you. Keep them coming. But I do want to start at the beginning. Let's start at the basics, and then we're kind of, as we progress through this, we're going to build on it, get more and more advanced. Um, if I'm joining this, I see the title, I want to start LinkedIn. We're all sitting at home, maybe have a little bit more time. Personal branding or building a brand on LinkedIn has been on my checklist forever. What are the basics if somebody hasn't really been actively using LinkedIn, and where should they start?
Yeah, so let's talk about two things. Let's talk about your profile, which is probably the thing. And then let's talk about comments, right? Because the power of LinkedIn, I think, is kind of that next level and going to the engagement level, and comments are the easier way to do that. But from a profile perspective, that's the representation of you. So at the very basics, think about the elements that are seen everywhere. Anytime you show up on LinkedIn, your photo is going to be there. So whatever that headshot image is, hopefully you've got something there, because if you've got just a static, the fake image, because hey, you don't have a photo here, fix that. Your title or description or whatever you put in that area is also really key. And then that, I think the goal of that is to bring people to you and get them to click to your profile and then learn more about you. So I think if you're prioritizing it, take care of that headshot, right? Invest the money, get a good professionally done headshot, do the best you can, right? Think about, how do you want to represent yourself? You can go beyond just talking about, this is, name, rank, and serial number, right? You don't have to talk
Mm-hmm.
about just your title. A lot of people, I don't always agree with it, but a lot of people talk about in that title description, using a benefit statement, talking specifically about, here's who I serve and how I serve them, and using that as a way to bring in your ideal client. I think that's a totally valid strategy. And then once you've got that nailed, look at the rest of your profile. And particularly for us in sales, I think the most important thing is it needs to be for your client and about them and how you serve them. It shouldn't be, hey, I'm an Uber quota crusher and I'm the greatest. I've gone to every president's club known to man. Your clients don't care about that. That's not who they want to buy from, right? So represent yourself the way you want to be seen and perceived by those that you're trying to attract. And then switching over to the comments, again, I think it's easy to take the pressure off of that blank, what's happening, what are you doing, or whatever the prompt is for a brand new fresh post, and just finding stuff that you agree with or that you want to engage with, that challenges you, that comes from these other sales stars, right? There's just so much great stuff that they're putting out there. Get thoughtful and engage in the comments, and it's such a great way to practice for getting good at posting later on. And you'll find you can do a lot of damage in the comments and really be known. I mean, if you're consistent about that, think about whose radar you might want to be on. Do you have an ideal client that's active on LinkedIn? Consistently comment in thoughtful ways on their posts. They are going to notice. They're going to be looking at your profile going, who is this guy? This is interesting.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I agree. The profile being unbelievably, important, and really take some time, like your first line and your about should literally say everything about you. Pretty much. Like everything I need to know, because there's a see more button. Not everyone's going to click that. That first line is so unbelievably important. Just like your first line of any post that you decide to do later, that first line in your about section, so important. Um, for me, it's actually a line from Charlie Chaplin's dictator speech, and it just says, "We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that," and that's really like what I try and stand for. That's like my ethos. So find whatever your ethos is, steal a quote, write it yourself, do whatever, and make sure it's front and center. Of course, um, having pictures or table stakes. And then I'll quickly share my kind of 4-step framework, which I shared in the PDF, because it's very much a get started framework. And we will get more advanced. And I used to teach people who came to me like the more advanced stuff. And then I developed this kind of 4-step process to get people going. So if you're just brand new, here's my kind of 4-step process. So number one, you're going to be a listener. So what a listener does is just understand what is going on LinkedIn, what people are responding to, and then maybe making some thoughtful comments every now and again, right? You're just showing up. People are going to start being like, hey, who's this this is the Scott Ingram guy. He always says something interesting in my comments. So you're going to do that for a few weeks. Then you're going to start going out there and essentially aggregating. So there's listener stage, then an aggregator stage. Where you're going to go out and find content for your ICP, whoever you're trying to build a community for, and you're going to go out and aggregate all this information, and you're going to just share it. Don't worry about the algorithm. That's for later. Just get that muscle memory going, and you need to consume content so that you can create content later. You need to have a lot of input in order to have output. Then you're going to go, Jamie's got it. Then you synthesize next. Then you're going to synthesize that information into bullet points. Here are 3 things that I learned. Do that for a few weeks. And then and only then start creating actual content. And we'll go into kind of how to do that. But listener, aggregator, synthesizer, and then creator is a good, easy kind of way to get your toes wet.
Yeah, and what I love about that model, Scott, is they build upon each other, and once you move from one stage to the other, it doesn't mean you stop doing the other one, right? You're always listening, you're always synthesizing
Totally.
as you move through sort of that hierarchy of greatness.
Yeah, totally, totally. Um, I'm trying to think of any other super basics. So we all know, links hurt your engagement. Don't put links in your actual posts. Worry about that later. But that is a pretty big basic that you could get frustrated if you're wondering why. I mentioned this, but I want to reiterate. First line is so important. Oftentimes, Scott, I don't know about you. I'll write a post and then I'll be like, oh, that's what I was trying to get at, and then I'll actually extract like the main point I'm trying to get across and actually put it at the beginning, so it kind of catches people's attention. It's
Yeah, I
something
think,
helpful
Scott,
I've been
with
doing.
both of those things, right? If we think about the
Hmm.
profile and we think about those posts, you're trying to lead people to the next step, right? So I want my picture and my
Yeah,
headline to be engaging enough to get you to click on my profile. And I want that first line or two in my about section to be interesting enough that you're going to want to go deeper and learn more about me. And then maybe you go read an article or you start looking at posts. Same thing with
yeah,
with when you're doing the posts, right? How do I get somebody to click that see more button and read the rest of the post? And then how do I get them to click that like button, or how do I get them to comment? Am I asking a question? Am I really
mhm,
asking for or trying to create that engagement and that conversation?
yeah, totally. And just a clarifying question, someone's asking, yeah, so you would put the link in either the comments or you can actually go back. I've found now if you wait like 45 minutes and go put the link in the post, you can actually do that now and it won't hurt you, which is kind of interesting. Um, okay, so let's dive more into. So let's say we have our profile set up, comments set up. What are some of these tips that some of these experts did about how can I start actively posting? Where do I kind of start here?
Yeah. So you know where I love the starting point. Sarah Brazier, who was recently on my Sales Success Stories podcast, she's the number one SDR at Gong, has a incredibly engaged group of folks that are following her and what she posts. And she just said, it's like Nike. You just do it. Like, don't worry about it. And the thing is, when you're getting started, you're not going to have a huge level of engagement and thousands of people that are going to be seeing this stuff. So you're going to learn by doing and just sort of practicing, and know that, don't worry, like, not many people are going to see that early stuff. You have to be, and I think it's important to sort of establish some expectations here. And some of the tips did a really good job of that, of like, expect that this is going to take 6 months before you really start to see something really, really meaningful. But the good news is the level of activity that you need to do LinkedIn well, and this came up in a whole variety of different ways also in the tips, is 3 to 5 times a week is really good. Like, daily is a lot, and very few people. I think the recommendation is actually going beyond daily. People have mixed opinions about whether or not there's even value in that. So I think it's just a matter of doing it, right? Getting started, choosing to be consistent and committing to it, and then deciding just what is that consistency for you, right? For me, I've experimented a couple of times and tried to get to daily. I've already got a daily podcast. Like, I don't, I don't need one more freaking thing that I need to do. So for me, a few times a week is
Yeah,
great. right? And I'm seeing incredible results. It really doesn't take a lot, which is the beauty of all of this. And really from there, I think once you start to develop that muscle memory, once you get into the practice, once you know, hey, I want to be posting, it starts to tune your radar. It kind of your synthesization. I can't even say what the plural of that
Let's
word
go
is,
with
Scott.
that. Yeah.
As you're synthesizing,
There you
you're
go.
starting to sort of pay attention to what am I experiencing? And here's the thing, I think this is about you. And I saw one of the questions is like, are you posting about your journey? Are you posting about your clients? Like, who is this for? I think that's one of the things you have to kind of figure out. You have to think about, what do I want to be known for? Who do I want to be attracting and engaging? So again, if you have a territory and you're focused on a particular industry, or you're focused on a particular geography, I think as much as you can, Scott and I are kind of different in that it makes sense for us to be known about sales because of the things that we're doing. But I think for the average sales professional, it makes sense, or the above average sales professional, I don't mean that in a negative way. I think it makes more sense to focus on your clients, your prospects, your ideal kind of target market, and starting to create content for them, create content with them. And so sharing stories about, here's an experience that this client had, right? They had this challenge and here's how they worked through it. And maybe that's inspirational in a way that is, and Scott, we should probably talk about this. You have to, Josh Deshay in the tip said it best. He's like, you have to master the art of selling without selling on this platform. This
Yeah.
is not a place to come pitch and to be dropping all the, here's how great I am, here's our product features and benefits. It is not that at all. You know what works best is it's about telling stories. That's what
Mhm.
works. It's about being authentic. It's about being vulnerable. Rachel May, who works with Keenan, has a great tip where she talks about, if you want to build an audience, then be authentic. If you want to build, oh, what did she say? A movement. She's got just a great word. You'll have to look it up in the PDF. But
Mhm.
if you really want to go to the next level, be vulnerable, right? Share the things that everybody's thinking, but nobody's saying, right?
Yeah.
Like the more you put yourself out there and you're real and and share just human stories and example and the real stuff, that is what connects with people. That's what people want to hear. That's what humanizes you, and really builds this type of following and community.
Totally. Yeah. And I believe it was authenticity builds a following, vulnerability builds an empire.
There
I
you
think that
go.
was Rachel May.
Perfect.
That's a good one. I like that a lot. And it's so true. I think that's it's essentially just good writing, right? The best writers in the world, you think of the best novels, even if it's like a fiction novel, you relate to this fiction, this story of Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings, because there's so much truth in the story, right? So um, definitely the more you can get to closer to your authentic self, the better it's gonna come across. And okay, so I want to reiterate a few things because we're getting a lot of people both in the Q&A and the chat that are hung up on this link thing. So it's the question was, so if I were to make a written post with an article attached, it would actually hurt your engagement. Yes, it would. So do your written post and then say, if you want to see the full blog article, put it in the comments, and then just put it in the first comment. It will hurt you. And the reason is very simple. A lot of people are like, why? LinkedIn, if you think about it, wants you to stay on LinkedIn. So if you're redirecting people off of LinkedIn onto another website, it's not in their best interest. So they're going to show less people that. So that's why you put it in the comments. I'm sure they'll catch on sooner or later, but that's the world
Yeah.
we live in
Hey,
now.
Scott,
And
let's
then,
why don't
yeah,
we switch gears a little bit? I want to talk about, so we've been talking a lot about profiles and posting and comments and all of this stuff. Let's
yeah,
talk about stuff that's a little bit more relevant from a sales standpoint. Like if you're using this platform because you're trying to set meetings, you're trying to generate opportunities, and you're connecting and engaging with people. I've seen a couple of messages about that here, questions about that. And I think there was a question that got shared before we even launched into this that I thought was great. It was basically, how well, what's the conversion rate? What are the statistics around messages to meetings kind of on the LinkedIn platform? Here's what I'll say about that. If the messages that people are sending are anything like the garbage that I receive, where you can see. So if you start pitching in the connection request, you're probably not getting a lot of people accepting your connection request, because every time that happens, like, I know what comes next. Like, I accept this thing and I get a pitch. Like, the last thing in the world that you want to
Mm-hmm.
do is connect and pitch, right? And it's interesting. So Josh Roth wrote an article for the ebook, which is an even more expanded version of the PDF that we're going to be releasing next Wednesday. He talked about the difference between soliciting and selling, and he uses this great, like, Times Square analogy, right? Like, if you're just standing on the corner and you're in like a freaking Minnie Mouse costume and you're just trying to get people to take pictures with you and you're asking every single person with the same undifferentiated message, that's soliciting. Hopefully, you're above that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, we're here to learn how to sell effectively. And you know who did this best? And it's not even in any of this content. I shared it in one of the daily sales tips because the full interview was 2 hours. But when I talked with Sarah Brazier, I took a snippet from that conversation, and she talked about the perfect way to prospect on LinkedIn. And all it is, it's about starting conversations. It's about starting conversations that are centric to the person that you're talking to. It's about doing that little bit of research, talking about something that they're doing, that they're interested in. Hopefully, it should be more connected to business, right? I think this whole, like, oh, you like this sports team, I like that sports team kind of stuff. That
Doesn't work.
come on, man. Try a little harder, right? And
Mm-hmm.
really find things to connect on. So if you can begin a conversation, ask some questions, naturally do that. And man, you've got to do patience. She talks about, on average, it's probably a week before she's gonna make sort of a soft pitch and ask for a meeting. Right. This isn't, as Josh Roth again was doing his research on this soliciting. He was just looking at his own messages, and he's like, basically nobody gets past 2 messages without pitching. You can do better than 2 messages. So engage thoughtfully, do that little bit of research. I'm a big believer just across the board in quality trumps quantity, right? This is a quality game. So pick your shots. Don't spray and pray, right? Be specific about, these are the ideal people I want to reach out to. Don't make it 100 today. Make it 20. Make it a manageable number of people where you're going to be able to don't spend a ton of time. Spend 3 minutes, spend 5 minutes reading a couple of their articles, reading a couple of their posts. Talk about those things. Talk about the insights that they shared. Dig deeper into those. Start a conversation about that to learn more about them and learn about your market. And then, if it makes sense and you're sort of progressing in that way, then I think you can absolutely say, hey, I think there's some things we're working on based on what you've talked about. I think there's good value and reason for us to spend a little bit of time on the phone together. Would you be open to that?
Mm-hmm.
all People were very rarely, once you've engaged in that type of thoughtful, meaningful dialogue, are going to say no to that. And I'd really encourage you, go listen to that tip. Dailysales.tips is where all of those live, and it wasn't very long ago. It was maybe a week or two ago.
Totally. Yeah. We got some great stuff here in the chat, and I want to highlight something of why that works for Sarah as well, because I get people connecting with me all the time and actually saying fairly thoughtful messages sometimes, being like, "Hey, I think we could help you in X, Y, Z." Just trying to start a conversation, see if there's a fit. I'll almost never respond, but Sarah connects first, and then I would imagine, I'm not sure, but she probably waits a little while.
Yep.
And because she's creating content every day, this person starts understanding Sarah. They know what she's about, they understand her. And then a week or two later, month later, whenever it is, they now feel like they know Sarah. I know for me, I have 18,000 one-sided relationships who all feel like they know me, and then I don't know them, and sometimes people will like forget that, but it's a good thing. um and so it's not just send Scott Ingram a connection request, he accepts, and then try and start a conversation. Hey, how's it going, Scott? I think this is relevant. I think you have to warm them up to you, your personality, what you stand for, and that's what content is about. And it's about getting them to kind of lean into you and actually creating an inbound lead engine. Like, there's also a world where those people see you so much that they reach out and they're like, "Hey man, like, what are you doing these days? Like, this, it's interesting that you're up to this." I bet Sarah gets inbounds from time to time as well. So that's part of the reason you connect content, is to kind of keep that relationship going when you're not actually having a conversation.
Scott, the other person who does that extraordinarily well and perfectly exhibits what you just talked about is Amy Quick. So
Hmm.
Amy, I describe, it took me again almost a 2 hour conversation to sort of get to the heart of what was going on, because I found out, so she was early in this project and I had reached out to her and I was like, you are doing some epically amazing stuff. I want to talk about what you're doing. And I learned in that conversation, hey, look, a conversation, that in January, she sourced $10 million in net new pipeline all through
Love
LinkedIn.
it. Love it.
And so I had to have her on Sales Success Stories, right? That's a success if I've ever heard one. And we really started to dig into that. And I really believe what it is, she is superhuman. She is the most just authentic, like there's just Amy. There's not business Amy, there's not vacation Amy, there's just Amy. And you get to know her. She is so real and so unique in the way that she posts. I've never seen anybody use as many emojis as effectively as she does. It is ridiculous. I think she did one the other day that had over 100 emojis. It was absolutely insane. I don't know how she does it, but
Yeah.
she built that just human front and was doing exactly what you're talking about, Scott. Right? She'd had these connections, and it was just over time that these executives were seeing who she was. And then, the time was right. She was top of mind. She was there. They're like, man, you seem awesome. Well,
Totally.
let's talk about this, because I think you might be able to help. It's not rocket science, but again, it's that persistence and consistency and just being real and not being over the top. And if you can't wait 5 minutes to pitch, Times Square is looking for more Minnie Mouses.
Totally, man. Totally. All right. So there's a lot of things popping out about audio messages.
Yeah.
I use audio messages from time to time. I've heard a lot of people have a lot of success with them. And Scott, would love to hear some of your findings with audio messages. The one thing I will say is people always look for a silver bullet. People always are like, what's the best email template? What's the best cold call opener? Do audio messages work? All these things. Remember, all these things are mediums, right? It's still about the message in that medium. So if you're just sending a bunch of generic audio messages, it's not going to be the silver bullet. Um, but if done effectively, they are a novel thing right now. So
Totally.
there's a first movers advantage there. Just like when video first came out, if you send a video over email, people were like, "Whoa!" And now it's kind of normal. So there is a first movers advantage. But Scott, I know some people talked about audio messages in the book. You want to talk a little bit about that?
For sure. So I lump them together. I think both audio messages and video messages, and in this case, we're talking about the direct messaging capability. So this has nothing to do with audio or video posts. This is Scott Barker and I are connected, and this only works in both instances. This only works on the mobile app. You can't do this on your laptop, on the desktop version of LinkedIn. So in the mobile app, you can record an audio. The audio limitation is 1 minute. So that's all you get. You got to fit your message in 60 seconds or less. I don't think there's a video limitation if you record the video in there. But to Scott's point, it still to this day is quite novel. There's a couple of tips in the PDF that talk about this, where again people are surprised. It's something different that they haven't seen before. So you're able to take advantage of sort of the novel thing. Again, I think this goes back to going beyond text posts and the video discussion we had earlier. It's humanizing. I get to hear your voice. I got a great one the other day, brand new connection, just wanted to introduce himself. He was in the Caribbean. I could hear birds in the background. It sounded freaking amazing, right? I could tell he was outside. It was so cool, right? It was because again,
Yeah.
it was this humanizing thing. Like I can literally picture James and he's recording this message for me. And then what's funny is I find this a few times. Oftentimes I'm in a place where I'm not going to record an audio message back. I'll just type back. And so it ends up this like audio text, audio text, audio text back and forth. But I think it works. It's actually how I originally connected with Tab Kavanaugh, Tab the recruiter, who's in the PDF, and she uses this extraordinarily well, and it makes you human. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit extra work because you got to do the work. You got to be in a quieter place, or maybe you go outside and have some birds chirping and just share that more humanizing message. And I want to go back to a really big theme, Scott, that you started to talk about earlier, right? When we talk about like, this is the thing, here's the exact tactic you need to use. If there's anything that you take away from all of this, what I want you to understand is there are a gajillion ways to use this platform. You need to just play with it, experiment with it, and find the way that is yours. There's lots of tips where folks are talking about you just have to figure out how to be you. You have to find your voice. And it's not just those things. I think you also have to find your style. I should probably be doing a lot more audio messages given how much audio stuff I do in the world. Video, not really my favorite thing. Okay, how can you leverage that? How should I be leveraging that? And just really experimenting, figuring out what's working, what's resonating. And I think the other thing that's really important here, and I hope people will sort of see the meta example of what I did. This whole PDF, the ebook, these webinars that have been record-breaking webinar. We did the first one on the the Sales Experts channel. They have done over 500 webinars over the years. This was the biggest webinar they'd ever seen. Literally smashed a record, and it's because it's bringing people together. And again, I only knew a third of the folks before I started this project. And I don't think it actually had very much to do with who I am, right? I think it had so much more to do with this is about making it about them and making it about the great work that they're doing and recognizing that. So I think you can look at this example, and you don't have to do it this big, right? You don't have to reach out to 36 people. But what if you started creating this little micro community with even 3 or 4 people who are your ideal customers, and almost turn them into mentors? And in fact, Logan Lyles kind of talks about in this tip, he talks about pods, which is a popular topic. But what I love about his spin on it is he talks about creating pods with and for your customers. What if you were to help them develop their presence and their voice and their reach on LinkedIn? Do you think those relationships might turn around and they might be in a position to want to buy from you, to refer you, to help you with reference conversations, all of those things? Like, do this with and for your community. It's and James Carberry, another contributor to the PDF, wrote a book. I mean, it is literally my playbook. Thank you, James, for writing that. So his book is called Content-Based Networking. And it's exactly this idea, right? So whether it's a tip thing or it's a PDF or it's this, invite people to have a conversation, and we're just going to stream it on a webinar. Maybe 1,000 people will show up, but maybe not, right? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. What matters more is Scott and I were already friends. We're better friends because we get to interact this way, right? And go a little bit deeper and share some time and hopefully make some contributions and provide some value to you.
Totally. Totally. And just to touch on something, because I don't know the level of everyone joining us. So a pod is something that exists on LinkedIn. The reason for them existing is something we didn't touch on, but the algorithm in the first 40 minutes is a very, very important time for how much reach your post will get. So if you write a post, you put it on LinkedIn, the first 40 minutes after you publish it is extremely important. They'll basically bucket you into 3 different camps of, only your first degree connections will see it, your secondary connections, or your third degree connections. And that's when you kind of go viral. And that's based on how many likes, comments, shares, and interaction you get in that first 40 minutes. So people have gamified that with LinkedIn pods. So they will create a pod with 10 other creators or friends or coworkers or colleagues, and they'll post their article or their post in there, and they'll all interact with it in the first 40 minutes. So it helps them get into that other bucket of engagement. Scott, what are your thoughts on pods? I do love the way you said it, of doing it for your customers, because then it's a give. What are your thoughts?
I have so many mixed feelings about this. In general, I don't like it. I think that These types of things are, at some point, LinkedIn will make their algorithm smarter than it is today, and they're going to pick up
Yeah.
on garbage like this, and it's just it doesn't really work. Here's what I will say: if you are going to do it, and some of the most powerful tips I think are almost also the most dangerous. There's a couple of tips in here about essentially stoking controversy, right? Like
Yeah.
really putting it out
Be
there, and
careful on that
man,
one.
and I'm telling you, super powerful. It can drive tons of engagement. It could drive tons of engagement and attention
Gaetano
that you
Tenardi is great
do
at
not
this. I don't
want.
know if you know Gaetano. Gaetano's great at walking the line of like
Yeah,
it's dicey stuff, but it's also truth. So if you speak truth, like we talked about in the beginning, it will resonate. But I think it's honestly it's terrible advice if you're a beginner.
yeah,
Get
totally,
get
totally. I won't even do it generally.
no.
Yeah, it's just too over the edge. So again, some of the most powerful tips are almost also the most dangerous. I think the only real way a pod is powerful, and this kind of like ruins the whole thing for everybody else, but I feel like you have to be the one to create it, and you have to be the one to curate it, and
Right.
really be picky and specific about who you want in that and why. Because it's funny, somebody reached out to me yesterday and asked and said, "Hey, we're spinning up this pod and we're doing this stuff." And I'm like, "Yeah, I have mixed feelings. To tell you what, I'll give it a try." It hasn't been 24 hours. I'm like, I'm out. This is not my thing, because you have to believe in the content that everybody else is posting. Do you want to be known
Totally.
for that? Do you want to be associated with that? And not that there was anything wrong with what it was, but it's just not in alignment with my brand and the core things that I'm really focused on, and the value that I'm trying to deliver. So I think it really goes back to, if you're going to use a pod, be super thoughtful about it, and be in some ways kind of really selfish about it. Think of it as like it's almost like building your own networking group or building your own dinner party. Like, who do you
Mhm.
want in that, and what do you want the interactions between the other people to be? Because that's where I think the real magic and the power is, and that's why Logan's tip in particular was so good. Is this could be really good if you're connecting your other customers, right? It's really helping you understand their thought process and the way that they think, and there's a lot of value in them knowing each other if they didn't already.
Yeah. Totally. Totally. All right. Well, so we have a ton of questions. I think we're just going to start rapid firing, and we'll try and be as
Let's
succinct as
go. I'll
possible.
go fast.
There's a quick one. Jeff, so can you give us an example of a solid first audio message? I'll give that one a shot. I would keep it simple. Don't overthink it. Just be like, hey, Jeff, so happy to be connected with you. I saw this post that you did, last week regarding X. What really stuck out to me is the line where you said this, can't wait to continue learning from each other. Have a great one. Hope you're staying safe and sane in this crazy world we live in. Simple, no ask, just give, make that connection, start creating content, warm Jeff up, and then maybe you can start another conversation in a few weeks. But
Yep.
don't
Key piece
overthink
there
it.
is reference one thing in their profile. Like, do the
Yes.
30 seconds of research, right?
Yeah,
That's going to put you in the top 5 or 10% of the people that are reaching out, and then ask a question, right? We're really trying to start a conversation with that message.
totally. Here's another one. How do you guys balance your time engaging? How do you present yourself from going into LinkedIn black holes? That's a great one. Scott,
Love
kick
this
it off.
question. And I tried to dig into it early on as I was working through this process. So if you look at my own posts and go back a ways, I think I actually shared a screenshot of my own, whatever the time tracking thing is on your iPhone, right? That shows when your activity is and how much time you're spending. That's a really good way. The trick is, you do have to find the balance. Like Scott said with the algorithm, that first hour is kind of the golden hour. So don't post and ghost. What you want to do is post at a time where you're going to have a little bit of bandwidth after that to maybe ask a couple of people strategically where this message is going to resonate, to connect with that idea, and just be there to comment. Because think about my own model. If you get 50 comments on a post and you reply to every one of those comments, that you now have 100 comments on the post. So you get to kind of gamify the system in that way. For me, I'm a productivity nerd, and I prioritize my LinkedIn activity really early and then late. And in some cases, I will turn it off during the day, because I just don't need it pulling at me, because I'm trying to get real actually work done.
Yeah,
So that first hour, and then maybe you revisit it at lunch, and you revisit it again in the evening, just to continue to stay engaged. And engagement is key, right? If somebody's taking the time to comment, send them a note back, comment back, send them a private message to thank them. Start those conversations. That's where the magic is.
totally. Yeah. I'll just quickly pile on that. Yeah, so I get mine done super early in the morning before my day starts. From 6 to 7, I have like a morning routine. As part of that morning routine, I'm thinking of what I'm going to post. I post it at 8. Try and hang out for the next like 20 minutes and engage. And then I've got, I don't know if you can see this here. So on the last thing, and it just says
Love
time
it. Time
wasters,
wasters.
and it's on the very last page of my iPhone. It's funny to call it a time waster when we're on a LinkedIn thing, but similar to Scott, I actually have the same now. I have a $3 million number I have to hit. That is the most important thing. All of this other stuff is just, it's great,
Helpful.
nice to
Yeah.
have. It's not
Yeah.
needs to have, right? Like hit your number, smash your number. That is number one. I have to say that, anytime we do this, if you're not hitting your number and you're spending time personal branding,
Wrong.
I'm not sure. Wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, here's the bigger piece on that. Like, if you need a deal, you need a meeting this week, don't start working on LinkedIn. Like, this is a
No.
very long game. You've got to be super patient in this. This is not the answer.
Totally. Yeah. It'll be
Pick up the
start
phone.
now. In 6 months, you'll reap the benefit. Pick up the
Right.
phone, bang it out. Yeah.
Right.
And then the other thing I do actually, so that I can engage sometimes throughout the day, if I have a meeting, and I'm in 8 to 10 meetings a day, if I have a meeting that goes like early, then I'll spend some of that time on LinkedIn. It's great because it serves a dual purpose. One, I try and be really succinct with my meetings and don't waste any time.
It's your reward. There you go.
And then two, it's kind of my reward. All right, let's do. This was a good one that we briefly touched on, but I think it's so important. I get this question a lot. I'm sure you do too. Bobby, thanks for the question. Is it better to speak to your role and what you're learning, or try to speak to thought leadership for your target personas? I think there's a balance.
100% agreed. Yeah, I think Nikki Ivey has a great tip about you don't need a title to be posting about this, right? There's value in each of us kind of sharing our journey. And so again, look at Amy Quick and what she's doing, all these folks. It's you want to kind of talk about your experience and what's real for you, but that's really got to be balanced, right? If who you're selling to has nothing to do with sales and all you're doing is talking about sales, that doesn't make sense, right? You really need to find ways to post stuff that is relevant to your ideal buyer. And to Scott's point, you got to kind of find the right balance, experiment, find your way, find your voice.
Totally. Yeah. I do a mixture of like my overall business views, my overall life views, very tactical sales advice, throw in a little bit of, things that we're doing in the industry, a few asks here and there to join this, hang out this. You got to experiment all day long. You'll find out what works for you. But if I was selling into non-sales, I would still share some of my sales journey because that's what I'm going through every day. But more often, I would spend trying to create thoughtful content that my personas would care about. Level of activity 3 times per week. You mean original content, or does that also include your thoughtful comments on other people's work? I post original content 5 times a week. But it's just getting started. You don't have to go right to 5 times a week. Start once a week, then do 2, then do 3. And yeah, it's about being consistent. If you set a goal, continue it. Thoughts there, Scott?
Yeah, and the 3 to 5 times a week and the daily suggestions, that is regarding posts, right? Comments, go crazy, right? Do as much or as little as you want there. You might want to set different goals there. A game that I like to play for myself, and Amy Volis has a great tip about just engaging thoughtfully. Like, if you're going to comment, it's not valuable to say great post. I agree, right? Like, really dig in, talk about the why. A game I play with myself, I try to win the comments. I want to have the most thoughtful, insightful comment. That my comment, even though this doesn't play into the algorithm anywhere, it's psychically thrilling to me. I want to get the most likes and the most engagement on my comment, even if it has nothing to do. It's not even one of my posts.
I love that. And that forces you to be extra thoughtful. Sometimes I get in bad habits. I just love it. Awesome. Because I just want to show the person I'm supporting them. Because I do like it, but I'm so busy. But that's a good way to do it. Win the comments. I think that's awesome. One other thing, which seems extremely obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway, because sometimes I even forget today. Every time I have a meeting on my calendar, those meetings that I'm on every single day, as you're waiting for them to show up in the Zoom, or you're not admitted to the Zoom room yet, go and quickly connect. Salespeople always talk about getting ghosted. I haven't been ghosted in the last year and a half since I've had a reputation on LinkedIn, because they won't get back to me for 2 weeks, and then they'll scroll their feed and they'll see a post and be like, oh, okay. And I know that's why they get back to me. I know it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And it
Because
should just be part of your
back in the
meeting
day, I
prep.
got ghosted a lot.
Should be part of your meeting prep, right? You should
Yeah.
be doing your research. You should be looking at your profile. And if they're an advanced LinkedIn user, they're going to see, hey, Scott looked at my profile. Okay, this guy's he's doing his job. He's doing the work. You know, I'm not going to have to explain who I am and what I do when you could just read my freaking profile.
Totally. This is Keith says, how frequently should you switch your style and approach before making changes? How do you know when it is time to change? Interesting question. That's like a broader question.
Let's talk about A/B
iteration
testing.
Life cycles. Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah. Again, I think you're going to have to experiment with your experiment there. I mean, you're definitely thinking about it right to recognize that, hey, you're going to need enough data points before making a decision. Jake Dunlap talked about this as well, in terms of, think of every post as just a data point. Some things works. Sometimes things don't work. Don't get hung up on that. Just think of it, this is a data point. What can I learn from this? And just keep moving forward.
Yeah, totally. Ben has a good question. Do you think it's important to interact on their activity before the DMs go out? I feel like some people have crazy networks which are growing, so even people throwing out content on the regular may not get visibility into the prospect's feed to do algorithm gating. I would strongly recommend interacting with their content before you DM. DM is like last resort. You know, honestly, your goal should be to get them to lean into you. My goal, honestly, is create such interesting, compelling content, show up so thoughtfully in my network, and make all these comments on all these people that they want to reach out. And it happens. And it will blow your mind the first time it happens, but then it will happen more frequently. DM
Amen.
is
Next
definitely
question.
last resort.
Brilliant.
Okay. What percentage of potential clients who have LinkedIn accounts actually read the postings regularly? Depends.
I don't know that I have the data on that. I mean, the high level data seems to be that it's only 1% of everybody that's on LinkedIn that is actively posting.
Yep.
And if you look at, how many people post reviews versus write reviews, it's a significant multiple. So if it's 1% that are posting, I'd say it's probably 20% that are kind of actively, regularly reading. I am often, all the time, surprised by somebody that I'm just randomly interacting with that I haven't seen in a while, that I don't even think about as being connected to on LinkedIn. It starts spewing my posts back to me and is talking about things I've written about. I'm like, holy, I had no idea. Right. Yeah. So it's more than you think, but it's not everybody.
Totally. Yeah. It is not everyone. And this is all, again, like, we don't work for LinkedIn. Like, this is stuff that has worked for us. Like, maybe you are maybe you're selling to
construction.
Maybe construction managers, or you're selling to NASA scientists who don't have time to be on LinkedIn. So a lot of what we're talking about is LinkedIn specific, but if you look at the community Scott has built, the sales success community, you look at things like Sales Hacker, that's another community. So the pro tip, the extra advanced LinkedIn tip is taking that community off of LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And creating a community, because there is a community for those construction workers that you're selling into, or those NASA scientists that you're selling into. Every single person wants to level up and wants to connect. Everyone, and they are doing that somewhere. So find that somewhere, show up thoughtfully every day, and build connections, authentic relationships. That's really what this is all about.
Brilliant. You need a better microphone that you can actually drop, Scott. Right now you're gonna have to throw your headset on the ground.
Yeah. So it's about finding those connections. And I did get this once that someone was like, hey, I looked everywhere and my very niche buyer does not have a community. Go create it.
Make it. Yeah.
Huge opportunity. All right, Scott, any final words of wisdom, man? It was so hard to distill such amazing advice down to just an hour. Anything you want to leave the community with?
Yeah, it's impossible to distill all of this, and that's why we've just put it in a free PDF. So
Yeah.
again, top1.fm/LinkedIn sales stars. It's all there for you. Read, share what's working for you. If you use the hashtag LinkedIn Sales Stars, to share your takeaways, share what's working. Let's continue to learn from each other as a community. It's about learning from the best and learning from what's working. And then there's going to be an even more full featured ebook version of this that'll come out on Wednesday. If you got $5 worth of value from the last hour, I promise you there's at least another $5 worth of value in all the bonus content that's in that ebook. So if you go to top1.fm/LinkedIn book, that's where you'll find that. You can pre-order it now, but again, it'll go live on Wednesday. Scott, this was fun. It's great to be able to engage with our audience in this way and answer these questions and hopefully help people do more with LinkedIn.
Totally, man. Thank you so much for your work on the PDF, on the book that's coming out. Thanks for spending the time with us today. I count myself lucky to know a guy like you, man, that's given so much. So thank you. And everyone who hung out with us, that was incredible. We had amazing engagement, thousands of people here. Thank you so much. Connect with us both on LinkedIn. We didn't get to all the questions. I'm sorry, but join us next time. Stay safe, stay sane.